Okay, class, let me get down to the syllabus like I promised. As I said, I'm missing the first week of class. Typically, the first day of class, we'd go through the syllabus in some amount of detail. So let me do this by video so we don't have to do that when I get back and we can get right to content. Of course, I'll answer questions by email or on the discussion forums about the syllabus and on January 15th when I return for the first day of class, but I'm not going to go through it in detail. I'm going to go through it in detail right now. Starting with, as I said before, my name is Dr. Kevin Gary. I'm an associate professor and your program chair in software engineering, and your course coordinator I mentioned in the last video as well is Dr. Servidia Bonzel. And again, you can email her with comments on the course content. However, keep in mind that she is on sabbatical, so she won't really review that content till over the summer. But it will pay forward going into next fall. So by all means, if you have comments on the content of the course. We have a class email address under Gmail, SER322ASU@gmail.com, as well as a video conferencing service, Zoom. So sometimes if you can't get to the Poly campus when you have a question, say for the TA's office hours or even for my office hours, maybe, for example, the TA's office hours 4 to 6 p.m., 3 to 5 p.m. Maybe you're working, maybe you're not on campus by that point. Maybe you have to leave right after class or something like that and you can't make his office hours. Maybe you have to set up an appointment. For whatever reason, we use Zoom, and you can go to this link and then you'll be asked to download a plugin, spin it up, and you can talk with us online. You can screen share, all those kinds of things. Your teaching assistant is Sudhavata Da. He is a PhD student of mine in the computer science program. Please do not email him at his ASU email address. Please use the class email address. I do prefer that students do not bother other students via their direct email addresses, but to use the class account. In terms of office hours, mine will be 10:30 to noon on Tuesday, Thursday, or by appointment. I also have a separate Zoom account listed there, so either one we can use if we need a video conference. And as I mentioned, Sudhavata's will be Tuesdays 4 to 6 and Thursdays 3 to 5 p.m. His office hours will be in the bullpen, which is across the hall from where the faculty offices are on the second floor of Peralta. Okay, about the course itself, the course outcomes. At the conclusion of this course, students shall be able to, 1, design a relational model solution for problems of intermediate complexity, a design outcome. Query relational databases using SQL. I mean, SQL is a declarative language that really you should all be comfortable with working with a relational database. So we'll write lots of SQL queries in here when we get to that section. Analyze a problem from a data perspective and model a solution using ER modeling or EER modeling. And we even look at a few other ways of modeling data, if you will. So you have a problem-solving skill, and we'll do that in the context of your project. Apply normalization theory to normalize a database. You may not know what normalization is now, but normalization is and there's different normal forms, if you will, is a way of providing a more efficient and, if you will, optimized design for a relational database. Demonstrate an understanding of query optimization and transaction processing. So think of normalization theory as going to be fairly mathematical and theoretical, if you will. It has practical applications, but it's some mathematical principles. Query optimization and transaction processing, we're going to flip back and talk very practically about, how do you get your database to run faster for a given database instance? How do you make those queries run faster? What kinds of things can you do? Because we want our databases to scale because there's a lot of data nowadays. Demonstrate an understanding of semi-structured NoSQL and graph databases. This is mainly a relational database course, but certainly over the last decade, with the explosion of information available via the internet, and data that just collected Internet of Things applications like this, folks are looking at a lot of new ways of looking at data that is semi-structured, using databases that do not rely on a SQL model, and using other modeling techniques like graphs and so forth. We'll take a look at these things in this class. It's not really the center point of the class, if you will. It's still focused on relational databases. Like Outcome 7 says, develop, populate, and query relational databases using SQL. But we will talk about some of those other data stores that are becoming quite prevalent nowadays. And then demonstrating ability to present project results to peers. You will do a team project in here, and in that team project, you will work in small groups, and you will be expected to do presentations. And I'm going to talk about the project a little bit. We'll hand it out about the third week of the semester, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it down below, so you get an idea of what kind of things we're going to be expecting. In terms of grading policies and assignments, there's 4 categories of assessable items in this class. There's what's called study sets, assignments, the project like I just mentioned, and exams. And we will have 3 exams in the class. And there you see the grading scale, the standard grading scale that'll be used in the course. But what about each of these assessable item categories? The first is this notion of a study set, and you may not have had something like this in other courses, so let me explain. You're going to have at least 5 of these, each worth 2%. You may have more. I may do 7, 8, 9 of them. I will take the top 5 of these. The study sets are really study group problems. A lot of them will come out of the textbook. They'll also come out of a repository of problems I have from the past. My intent is that you have problem sets that you can go over in group study, and I will give out solutions to them, to almost all the questions on the study set, and they will have a submission date. But when we grade them, we're going to grade them on an effort basis, meaning I want to know that you either individually or you and your group, and preferably in a group, I really believe in group study, will sit down and take a shot at these problems. Okay. Now, if you make a reasonable effort on them, and even if you don't get them correct, we're still going to give you that 2%. So it's an easy 10% of your grade to get. You just have to sit down and do the study sets. Now, if you just sit down and look at the solutions I provide, I'm not going to give you those solutions before you submit. You're going to have to submit and show that you showed an effort to try and answer the problem. But it isn't really about being right or wrong. It's about showing that you've been trying to study them and get a reasonable effort associated with things. We're going to do that as we do the content of the course. Meaning, as you get a module, and that like the first module, Introduction to Relational Database Systems, there'll be a first study set out there, so you can read that chapter, you can watch that video, and you can start to try to answer some of these questions. After a study set will come an assignment. An assignment is an individual activity, not done in your groups, and it is for handing in, and it does need to be correct, if you will. Each assignment that we score will be worth 6% of your grade. The assignments will be, you'll have roughly a week to do them, and they'll be more significant than the study sets, I would say. Or at least certainly they're going to feel more significant because you have to do them individually. Those will be graded according to a specific grading rubric. Really a lot of correctness. Like when you do a SQL one, you do a design one, we'll be looking for specific things. You'll get graded feedback from myself and the TA on those, and so forth. So there'll be a handout for each one of those. But you can expect somewhat the rhythm of the class to be, as you go over content, study set, get a chance to practice, study in groups. Then the next week you'll get an assignment on basically the same thing, and in that assignment you'll have to do it individually, and that will get scored and be a larger part of the overall class grade. Okay. Now again, there'll be more than 5 individual assignments, so there will be an ability to have 1 or more of those dropped, I would say. I'm not going to specify how many study sets and assignments exactly I'm going to give out. It'll vary, but I can guarantee you that there'll at least be 6 of each. You're going to be able to drop at least 1, and perhaps maybe more than 1. Okay, then the project. Again, we're going to talk about more detail about 3 weeks into the semester, but the project is going to be a near semester long, meaning from week 3 until the last week of class. Project that you could complete in small groups. I haven't decided yet, groups of 3 or 4. The applied project will include aspects that run throughout the entire course, so you're going to do it throughout the semester and in cycles, if you will, that match up with different phases of your project. So for example, we're going to talk about a lot about data modeling and data design in the first third of the course. And so your project design, you will have a milestone where I expect that you've done some design on your project topic, and turn that in, and not at the end of the semester. You're going to be asked to turn it in the first half of the semester. So there'll be elements of design. There'll be elements of implementation, programming. So you'll be using Java, our programming language for the degree program, and SQL together, and we'll talk about how you do that. That'll be covered in class. And then we'll talk about optimization. Then I expect that you go into your implementation and actually make the queries run better, faster, go into the database, optimize it, talk about the kind of things going on in your data model, your data implementation, that you can do to make these things run better, faster, more scalable. We'll also talk about things like unit testing, because as software engineers, you should know how to apply those kinds of engineering principles to a database-centric implementation. You'll be required to present your work. I haven't decided if that's going to be in class or via outside of class presentations, but one way or the other, you will do a presentation toward the end of the semester. Okay, so that's roughly what the project is. It's worth 22.5%, 225 points in this class. So a significant enough percentage of your grade, and something that will run, as I said, from week 3 to the end of the semester. I'm going to give 3 exams during the course. They are not going to be cumulative, which means the first exam will be roughly a third of the course. The second exam will be roughly 2/3 of the way into the course, and the third and final exam will be during the final exam period, which is on May 2nd, Thursday, May 2nd. I think it's noon, but I don't have it up in front of me. It's not too bad a time, but it's on Thursday, May 2nd, and that's when exam 3 will be. The exams will not be directly cumulative, meaning I'm not going to ask you in exam 3 about stuff I asked you in exam 1. However, I will say that you really need to be up on the material from earlier in the course if you're going to do better on the things later in the course. So for example, if we go over query optimization in the last third of the course, even though we did most of the query stuff in the middle part of the course for exam 2, that's when you're going to do a lot of SQL, relational algebra, things like that. If you don't know the SQL very well, you're going to have a very difficult time understanding how to optimize the queries as well, is what I'm trying to say. But in general, each one is worth 12.5%, or 1/8 of your course grade. I'm not dropping exams. Each one of those is going to count, and each one of those will be based on the third of the course. You can think of the first exam, when I mapped it out, it's going to happen roughly mid-February, and the second exam will happen roughly third week of March, and then we go until April 25th is our last day of a regular class, and the final exam will be on May 2nd. Those are rough dates, though. I'm going to tell you about 2 weeks out when each of these exams will fall, because the goal is for me to get through a certain specific set of content that's focused. So I want to make sure, for example, we get all the way through database design and modeling, because that's going to be the focus of exam 1. I want to make sure you get through all the way through querying a database, and even DML, the data manipulation language, where you can create database instances and the like in SQL, and do that before I give exam 2. So those are rough approximate dates, but that's why I don't have specific dates on here other than the third exam happening on May 2nd. In terms of grade appeals, standard grade appeal policy, I need a grade appeal in writing. That means email is fine. When you submit a grade appeal, you should, it says submit your appeal with the graded lab quiz exam. If it's something that is submitted through Canvas, you can just tell us what it is. We can go get the submission. But if it's an exam or something like that, or something we made you physically turn in, perhaps a data model, then you're going to have to turn it in with the appeal. And then you have to be very specific about what you're appealing. Like, I got 5 points off for this query, but I can show that this query works. I think I deserve those 5 points. I need to be very specific on the point deductions, and understand what you're appealing. And I review all grade appeals myself. Don't appeal a grade to the TA. If you get something back that's graded and you don't like it, and you think, oh, the TA must have graded that, and I don't agree with it, I'm going to go complain to the TA. Do not do that. That is not allowed. I get very upset when students do that. When you have a problem with your grade on something, you send an appeal to me. All right. I don't recommend. I don't even come into office hours and say, hey, I got a problem with this grade. I need it in writing, in an email, and I'll look at it. I personally look at it. I keep a folder of these things. I go through them. If I need to see you, if there's something we don't see eye to eye on, I looked at the appeal. I don't agree with it, or whatever. Then we can set up a meeting. Come into my office hours. But in any event, I don't mind grade appeals at all. If you think something's incorrect. I frivolous ones that have no merit, I kind of mind those because they just take up time. But I expect, don't be afraid if you have something that was graded that you disagree with and you want to raise it as an issue. I handle these all the time, no problem. In terms of next section of syllabus, absence and makeup policies, I don't require attendance. I'm not going to take out an attendance sheet or anything like that. Any assessments under the assignments or perhaps quizzes or a study set. Sometimes I'll do study sets in class. Will be an in-class exercise as well. So please be advised that if you miss something, if you do not come to class, even though I won't be taking attendance, um, you you are responsible for whatever it is I covered. If I do a homework change, if I announce an exam date, it's not my job to go find you and tell you because you didn't come to class. You've got to come find me or trust your fellow students or whatnot. Use Canvas, see what's posted on the site, and make sure you understand what you missed and make up for that. Okay, accommodations are made for religious observances. Now, religious observances are something that you should know about now. So, anyone with a concern about a religious observance should come to me at the beginning of the semester. Um, Ones that you aren't aware of at the beginning of the semester are things like a medical issue, a death in the family, those kinds of things. You need to come to me for as soon as you know that something is up, that something has happened. If it is a medical excuse, I do require that you get documentation from your physician of some kind. I don't want to invade your privacy. I don't need to know a bunch of detail, but I do need to know that the medical condition can be verified, and therefore may have affected your ability to get an assignment done, show up for an exam, whatever. Okay. Um, in terms of reading special materials, we have a required textbook, Fundamental of Database Systems. This is the Amazon. This is the Follett page, which is your bookstore. That's what the cover looks like. It's the 7th edition. This is the Amazon one. Now, whether you look in the Amazon site, you look in the Follett site, I understand that this is a very expensive textbook. And I got a problem with how expensive textbooks are. I mean, I think the rental of a used book for $75. That I understand that it's a cost burden how much textbooks cost these days. In a lot of my courses, I don't require a textbook. But in this course, we've decided to require this textbook. It's something that we follow pretty closely. It's something we will pull problems from. And, is something that I suggest that you do purchase. Now, do you rent? Do you buy used? Do you buy new? Do you get the 7th edition? Um, you know, we actually have in the Poly Library a reserve copy of, I think the 6th or 5th edition. Um, you can get older editions like the 5th and 6th a lot cheaper. You would find that a lot of the problems that we would assign in study sets out of the end of a chapter and a lot of the readings are largely unchanged for the content we're going to do. I mean, each edition has kind of added more and newer stuff. Maybe some of the stuff as we get to NoSQL and the like might change, but you could probably save a lot of money by doing by using an older edition if you want. Another thing you can do is you might consider in your study group of sharing a textbook and splitting up the costs, and then you can kind of decide whether to return it or keep it. One of you keep it kind of thing at the end of the semester, whichever way you want to do it. I do understand that this, whether it's Amazon, whether it's through the bookstore, you're looking at, $150, $190 for a new copy of the textbook, and that's prohibitive. However, we will rely on it. It's not something we're asking you to buy, and then we won't ask you to do anything. You can even see in week In the first module, we're asking you to read 3 of the chapters, and there'll be a lot of readings like that throughout the semester, as well as study sets and perhaps even assignment problems taken from the textbook. So some way or another, you got to come to an arrangement with your peers, or through using another edition, or just honestly choking it up and buying the book, because you will need it for this course. Okay. So that's a course, that's a primary thing. Other things that we need, we'll provide for you. Classroom behavior, just, I'm not even going to talk about that. I mean, you're all mature adults. You have your cell phones off. You shouldn't be sitting there playing games or whatnot. Come and engage in class. If you got something going on with work or a personal situation, please step out of class when your phone goes off, that kind of thing. Something that's worth a little bit more talking about is the academic integrity policy. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because we have a whole long set of things under the academic integrity policy. But I'm going to say I take academic integrity incredibly seriously. It's a rising issue in universities across the country and around the world. And so we look for these things. We have tools that we run against your code. We have plagiarism detectors for things that you write up, if you will. And we have very specific criteria. So let me highlight a few things. One is you can't go get it on Google or Stack Overflow and call it your own. All right. You can't go, this textbook's been, I took databases from the second edition of this textbook back in 1990. It's been around for a long, long time. If you find a solution to something, that was assigned out of the book and you use it, whether it came from the publisher's site or came from some other site, Course Hero or something like that, that's grounds for failing the course. It's not allowed. It's not allowed to use things that you Google up in Stack Overflow, particularly on the assignments, all right? So remember, we have 2 different categories. We have study sets and we have assignments. Study sets just require an effort, all right? You still can't turn in something else, by the way. If you grab something for a study set and turn it in and call it your own work, we're going to have a big problem with that. That is a violation of the academic integrity policy. But the bigger one of those assignments, where it's your individual work, those are individual. So you can't go back to your study group and say, hey, how'd you do on the, what's going on in the assignment? If you have a problem, you need to see me, or you need to see the TA, you need to ask a question in class or on the discussion forums and get help that way. Not get help from your peers in your study group or other classmates, or from an online source, and then call that work your own. If you do that, it will be an academic integrity violation. The penalty for an academic integrity violation on an assignment, a lab, a project deliverable, or whatnot will be a reduction in the course letter grade for the first offense and failure of the course for the second offense. I do follow up with a letter to the dean's office. The dean's office in the IRA Fulton Schools of Engineering generally has a 2-strike policy, meaning if you have had an academic integrity violation recorded with the dean's office, and this is the second one, they will review your case for dismissal from the university. So you don't want to do that, okay? And I would prefer to work with you. I'd prefer for you to come in and talk to me about what's going on in your situation, what you're struggling with, inside or outside of class. I'd even respect you more if whatever happened, you couldn't find the time, or you couldn't get over a hump, and you took the bad grade, because I don't respect cheaters. And if you cheat in my class, and I look for them, and if I find them, you'll not find a very sympathetic ear when you come to my office once I found and believe that you've committed an academic integrity violation. In any event, I do expect you to read carefully this entire section and understand it, because I'm not going to accept excuses of, well, I didn't know I couldn't go Google that. Oh, I didn't know I couldn't go and ask my study group partner. I'm not going to accept those excuses. I'm telling you right now, those things are not allowed when turning in an individual assignment. Disability accommodations, I haven't gotten any requests, but if you have a accommodation with the DRC, certainly more than happy to work with you and work with them to get you the content and make the test context whatever it is that you need to be. Any additional notices? Again, I don't expect that to change the syllabus at all. Sexual discrimination section. If I notice any sexual discrimination in this course, I will certainly report it. The faculty has actually been getting a lot more training on issues of sexual and even racial and gender and other forms of discrimination, and we are being aggressively told to make sure that we report these things. If you see these things, you should report them as well. They have no place in an academic environment. Some additional course information. The prerequisites, I do expect that you've taken and passed the discrete mathematics course, and that you've taken and passed the SER322 data structures course. And with that, you should have had programming in Java in several of your courses. Your first and second programming course, your 222 course, because we will do a little bit of Java programming in a specific part of this course. We'll have Java applications that talk to a database. Discrete mathematics will be used as a basis for some of the data modeling and other mathematical theory that we will go through, perhaps also with like normalization, with perhaps graph databases, with perhaps query optimization. The course description is repeated there that you can find online. And these are, I mean, this is a very quick notion of what the course topics were. A lot of those you can infer from what I've said already and talked about with the course outcomes. But again, in reality, this is kind of the first relational database course that just about everybody takes, and that's why we're making a required part of our major map going forward next year. And so we'll cover all that stuff that everyone talks about with relational databases and SQL. But again, we are going to try and get to some of the newer stuff. You're going to program against them. You're going to look at a NoSQL database. If we have time, we'll get out on the cloud a little bit and talk about things with respect to big data, or perhaps a cloud-based service like DynamoDB or something like that as time permits. So that's what we're going to try and cover in the course. That's an overview of your syllabus. You should have read the syllabus in detail, as well as watch this video as part of your week one while I'm away. As I said, I will return for class on January 15th. I'll answer some quick questions, but other than that, I'm going to jump right into ER modeling and chapter 3. So I look forward to seeing you then.